On the morning the papers were signed, Claire Bennett wore the same navy suit she'd interviewed in at 22, the one she kept for decisions that reshaped budgets or lives. The clerk slid the file forward and said, without looking up, "Initial here and here." Ethan Grant's eyes were red. "Claire, I screwed up. I know that now." She tapped the pen against the line and said, without cruelty, "Stand up straight when you talk. It's bankruptcy, not bereavement." He swallowed. "Could we ever get married again?" "Sorry," Claire said, signing where the ink needed her. "I already did." The townhouse on Maple Lane had once been a blank box with a leaning fence. Over 3 years, she made it her subway tile set with a laser level, a walnut table sanded on a drop cloth in the driveway, a garden plotted on graph paper and planted by hand coneflower, Russian sage, and a stubborn peony that never bloomed, but might someday. When Ethan suggested a move, better district, easier commute, think of hypothetical children, the math checked out. She took the balcony photo in the glass tower, posted it with a heart, watched the congratulations arrive in columns. Her phone rang. Maya Patel skipped pleasantries. "Mads is back. I just saw Ethan hand your townhouse to her." Not anger, at first, clarity. Numbers reconciling to an ugly truth. Claire drove to Maple Lane, parked behind Ethan's Tesla, and called from the curb. "I'm here. Could you open up? I need to grab something." A pause. "Give me a minute." He made her wait 30. When he opened the door, he looked like apology arranged into a man collar, crooked, eyes sore. She stepped close, pinched his tie, and read the makeup on his collar. Warm undertone. Expensive formula. His hand rose, fell. Mads needed a place. I sold it to her." "Sold," Claire said lightly, "as in market price, inspection, title insurance, or sold the way a fire sale is called, an opportunity?" She didn't have anywhere to go. "She has fans, a management company, a family," Claire said. "She has everywhere to go." She didn't cry or raise her voice. "We're done." He reached for her wrist, stumbled, and a delivery van nosing past clipped his shoulder hard enough to spin him into the hedges. Neighbors shouted. Madeline Hale, sunglasses, scarf, and crisis-ready poise ran from the kitchen. Sirens answered. In the ambulance, Ethan blinked at the ceiling, groped for a hand, found Madeline's. Claire pressed gauze hard to the wound, he yelped, and she told the EMT, sorry, with perfect sincerity. Ethan had chased Madeline for years, hometown prodigy turned opera darling, who married a corporate heir at 24, and floated through society pages like a trick of light. Claire met Ethan in college, then again when he rode home drunk and crying over Madeline's indifference. Claire, practical to the bone, made him toast and water. 6 months later, he proposed with a ring and a vision, stability, a home, a life they could actually afford. Now, a doctor handed a consent form to Madeline. Madeline, voice tuned to humility, smiled at Claire. You should sign. Your family. The audacity almost made Claire laugh. She signed because liability is concrete and judges like people who follow procedures. When the nurse left, Claire said, professionally bright, what role is this ingenue in distress? We don't do concubines. Madeline flushed and left, then returned once Ethan was coherent with broth and whispers. I'll call your lawyer. I'll talk to the contractor. You won't, Claire said, lifting her phone. She recorded at an angle that caught Ethan's face and Madeline's careful tears. Evidence isn't romance. It's leverage. She's been hurt, Ethan said. Her husband, make your statement under oath, Claire said. Otherwise, save it for your memoir. She stayed until the staples were in, then went home to the apartment she'd never wanted. Her family ran funds like a monastery discipline, ritual, 3 questions. What do you own? What do you owe? What risk are you ignoring because it flatters you? She called the company accountant, Nancy, who had let her sit in on audits for years. How much left are operating accounts? About $8 million, Nancy said. Consulting, advances, personal loans, undefined aid. To whom? 0. 6. Shells. Individuals. 1 trust I can't place yet. For what? Claire already knew. Helping someone. She hung up and did the thing Ethan would never expect. She called Alexander Vaughn. He met her in a glass conference room with the blinds drawn. Suit worth a motorcycle, tie imperfect. You unblocked my number to discuss her. My soon-to-be ex is wiring your soon-to-be ex-wife money, Claire said. I need to stop it without burning my own house down. We've filed to dissolve the marriage, Alexander said, sliding a summary page across the table, 2 lines highlighted. She is $300 million down. Claire's stomach didn't drop, it sharpened. Casinos. And private tables, he said. And men who like to play savior at 10% weekly. She's very good at meeting saviors. I don't do melodrama. If you want revenge, look elsewhere. If you want to protect your balance sheet, we can partner. I want both, Claire said. Mostly the second. He considered, then I'll help if you marry me. She laughed, then saw he didn't. Not part of this. It is if you want me fully committed. I signed the wrong contract once. I won't sign another unless it gives me something real. What are you offering? My portfolio in your name, prenup assigning control to you? No questions. He said it like a monthly metric. Why? Because I tried being what my family wanted. You tried picking a man who didn't deserve you. We're both better at spreadsheets than feelings. He set down a folder. Health reports? Financials? Background on me, compiled by me. Decide. She asked for time and walked into clean sunlight, thinking about how often women have to improvise because men treat reality as optional. She built her own plan. Her cousin Noah ran a construction venture Ethan's firm supplied. Ethan's flagship project depended on Noah's contract and Claire's kindness. They met in a diner with cracked red booths. Pull your contract, she said. Rewrite under a new LLC. I'll fund it. We take delivery, pay your crews. Ethan's firm becomes a sub. No advances. He'll howl, Noah said. He can howl into a compliance manual, Claire said. I'm done paying tuition for his love affairs. She formed Maple Lane Holdings Symmetry pleased her filed liens, moved slow enough not to look like a raid, and fast enough to beat the next advance. When Ethan called for a bridge, your CD is maturing, could you float it? She texted, call me bad signal, then wrote what she wanted in the record, company tight? How much did you already move? The 3 dots danced, then, don't ask your family. I'll figure it out. Face and pride, America's most expensive luxuries. She met him in his office, glass clear, rug immaculate, assistant hovering and then fleeing. He was thinner, hollows carved under his cheekbones. Let's postpone, he said. Give me a quarter. The flagship is about to break open. We'll be fine. Mads is in danger. Her husband knows, Claire said, setting a folder down and opening it for him transfer receipts. Lean notices a new contract naming Maple Lane Holdings Prime. You can keep working. You just don't spend my money while you play rescue. He flipped, color draining. You emptied the accounts. You did, Claire said. I stopped the bleeding. He set a paperweight down hard enough to crack the glass tray. You'd use my company to punish me? Not punishment. Governance. You hid $8 million of risk from your partner. You collateralized our marriage. I'm taking back collateral. You used to be kind. I used to be naive. Now I'm solvent. He signed the divorce draft the next afternoon. Alexander called, "We have a problem and an opportunity." Translation, something was about to blow, the leverage was ready. You'll want to see it yourself. Can we make the pickup formal? They met outside the county building, on the day the cooling-off period ended. He stood at the curb with a thermos. "Bird's nest," he said. "Minimal sugar." "Showing off is inefficient," she said, then took a spoonful because the day would be long. A black SUV glided up. An aide handed him a tablet. He passed it to Claire. Beige hotel suite. Madeline at the center, charming, apologizing, promising. Timestamps and transaction IDs glowed in the corner like an accountant's nightlight. "Please," a man said, voice shaking. "I sold my father's house." "You said..." "You're misunderstanding," Madeline breathed. "It's complicated, but you'll get it back." Another voice. "You told me I was the only one." Alexander murmured to security radios, murmured back. Claire watched Ethan fume on the courthouse steps. She held the tablet up where he could see without touching it. "Look." 2 seconds for confusion to become comprehension, 4 for comprehension to become animal grief. "This is edited," he said weakly, then softer. "She told me she trusted me." "She trusts anyone who can wire quickly," Claire said. "I'm not gloating. I'm pointing at a hole in your boat." Madeline appeared on cue, hair immaculate, crisis face polished, ran past Ethan and sank to her knees in front of Alexander. "I can do rehab privately." "Just don't stop telling stories," Alexander said, flat. "We've been divorced for months." "You signed papers. You signed an NDA. You broke it. You owe people who prefer fists to lawyers. I prefer neither." Security guided her away. "Don't hurt her," Ethan said, nausea and gallantry mixing badly. "No one will," Alexander said. "We're not living in a movie." Ethan turned to Claire. "I can fix this. Give me a year." "You're a good builder," she said, because it was true. "But a terrible trustee." He whispered, "Please." She signed the last line. The judge stamped. The clerk called the next file. 2 weeks later, she married Alexander in a small civil ceremony. Momentum is an asset. Sentimental waiting periods are a luxury. Her parents sat stiff, then relaxed, when Alexander placed a folder on the table after the vows transfer confirmations, custodial assignments, 3 title deeds, a ring box he didn't open. Claire read every line. For the perfunctory photo, he said, "We can do a party later." "We won't," she said, "but thank you." He smiled without offense. "Work, then." Work. She went home to the apartment she'd keep for herself and wrote 2 letters, one authorizing audits with teeth, one to the garden club of Maple Lane, apologizing for the peony and enclosing a check for a gardener to coax it back, to health. Alexander offered companies the way some men offer roses. She took one, a real estate investment trust, seeded with properties that needed rational owners. She put Maple Lane Holdings inside it and hired women who'd been edged out of rooms like Ethan's, a civil engineer who swore when happy, a contracts lawyer who laughed when something finally made sense, a CFO labeled culture fit until she asked the wrong questions. They modeled cash flows, refused meetings with men who called Claire sweetheart, bought 2 small suppliers at fair prices, and gave crews raises pegged to actual margins. The month the first distribution hit, Claire stood in the kitchen and let herself be openly pleased for 60 seconds. She met Alexander for dinner weekly in a quiet place with good light. They didn't pretend to be something they weren't. He talked about hard exits, she talked about contracts that kept developers honest. When he sent gifts, she teased him for inefficiency and used them anyway, if consumable coffee, tea, berries, so ripe they stained her fingers. When he tried to buy a car, she said, "No." Then, seeing his confusion, "I prefer leasing assets with known depreciation curves." He laughed properly, and she saw the stiffness was armor he could put down. Madeline did not vanish. She leveraged remaining sympathy into a podcast about surviving control, booked a shoot in sleeves that hid the bruises of her own decisions, and let rumors about abuse stand until a lawyer sent exhibits and a draft complaint spelling out extortion. The podcast paused. The photos disappeared. Ethan took a contract out of state. A month later, Claire received a courtesy copy of a bankruptcy petition. She read it like an obituary, finger-tapping the lines that mattered: personal guarantees he shouldn't have signed bridge loans where bridges don't belong, 3 creditors whose names matched the hotel timestamps. She sat with the petition an hour, then sent Nancy a check-marked bonus for keeping clean books when others preferred stories. She didn't call Ethan or watch Madeline's feeds. She watered the herbs and texted her mother a photo of the basil. "You were right about the south light." Her mother replied with pesto and a question about grandchildren that Claire ignored, not unkindly. On a Wednesday, Ethan's number flashed again and again until she answered. "What?" she said. "I'm sorry," he said. "That's not a question." "Could you help?" "Not money." Advice. "Hire a bankruptcy lawyer and a therapist who does boundaries," Claire said. "And stop wiring women money to prove you're a man." Silence. Then, small "I loved you." "You loved how I made your life frictionless," she said. "Precise, not cruel." "There's a difference." He cried quietly. She didn't. She set the phone down and logged the moment like a ledger entry 112p. M. Stopped being responsible for someone else's fantasy. Alexander invited her parents to dinner at a place where the napkins felt like new bills. He didn't posture. He asked her mother about a chair her father had restored, and her father, who disapproved of many things but adored good craftsmanship, talked for 20 minutes. Alexander listened like a man who could buy 100 chairs and still understand the value of this one. After coffee, her mother squeezed her hand on the sidewalk. Her father said, surprised at himself, "He's not like the last one." "He isn't," Claire said. "He seems decent." He island. Later in the kitchen, her mother, "You seem lighter." "I am," Claire said, and realized it was true. Spring brought the compulsion to check the peony. She drove to Maple Lane on a Saturday with a trowel, amendments, and a polite letter in case the new owner objected. New mailbox, same leaning fence, the old suction cup prism still tossing rainbows on the sink. She knelt at the bed. She double-dug summers back. The leaves were glossy, buds like fists. She loosened soil and worked in compost. "Ma'am?" a gentle voice said. A man in his 60s wearing a Union-proud cap held a paper bag and a key on a lanyard. "I used to live here," she said, standing. "I planted this." "Helping," he said. "We bought from a lady who had to leave in a hurry. Said the house had bad memories." He squinted at the bed. "This thing never bloomed. My wife talks to it." "It's stubborn," Claire said. "But not hopeless." He nodded. "A lot of things aren't given time." She sat in her car a long minute afterward. The peony would bloom or it wouldn't. Neither outcome was a judgment. At the office, Maple Lane Holdings closed its first fiscal year with numbers that would have made her grandfather nod once. She gave raises without speeches. When the room cleared, Alexander stood in the doorway, hands in pockets. "You did that." "We did," she said. He stepped forward, uncharacteristically unsure. "I like you. I know this wasn't the dream when you were 20. At 20, my dream was a lock that worked," she said. "I've upgraded." "Do you want?" He gestured between them, imprecise for once. I want this, she said. On terms we choose. No fairy tale. He exhaled. I can do that. I know, she said, taking his hand. A year after the courthouse, a charity asked her to speak about ethical redevelopment. She said yes because the board finally put 3 women on the funding committee, and because saying no to soft power is its own kind of arrogance. She wore the navy suit, altered to fit better, and said from the podium, "We build well not by wishing, but by accounting. We keep promises by counting costs before we make them. We're generous with what is ours, and careful with what is not." After, Madeline approached beautiful in that brittle way that survives on adrenaline and denial. Up close, perfect makeup, practice smile, tired eyes. Congratulations, Madeline said. You won. This wasn't a game, Claire said. But thank you. The smile flickered. I'm out. Rehab. 12 months. No casinos. No men who text money. It's, she swallowed, boring. Boring is underrated, Claire said. Good luck. For an instant, Madeline looked very young, a girl promised adoration and never taught ordinary. You were never the enemy, she said, and left. Claire hoped she meant it. A postcard arrived from a coastal town 3 states away. I'm teaching shop at the community college, Ethan wrote in careful hand. I like it. I build small things that don't require lies. I hope your garden is blooming. E. She put the card in a drawer, not a shrine, and pictured him showing a student the grain of a board and how to follow it. She wished him the dignity of boring. On a Tuesday in May, she woke before dawn, took coffee in a travel mug, and drove to Maple Lane. She didn't park out front, walked around the block, and came up the alley. At the fence, she stopped. The garden was green and slightly wild, and in the center, the peony had opened enormous, indecent with petals, the kind of flower that makes sensible people irrational. She laughed once, clapped like a child. The kitchen light flicked on the Union Proud. Man peered out, saw her, and saluted. She returned it and left. On the way to the office, she called Alexander. Emergency, she said. What's wrong? The peony bloomed. A beet. I'm getting you a cake shaped like a peony. Please don't, she said. Bring coffee. On it. People think a love story ends when the judge stamps or when the vows are said. Claire learned the end and the beginning are the same day when you open a notebook and write down the truth, without flinching. She kept a ledger not of money but of realities. Assets, a company that pays on time, a marriage run like a partnership instead of a rescue in costume, a mother asking fewer questions and a father talking more about chairs, a friend who still calls at 7 to say, don't get soft, a peony that finally gave in to sunlight and stubbornness. Liabilities, a tendency to overfunction impatience with inefficiency, an occasional ache when she passed a window at dusk and saw 2 silhouettes, because she had wanted that once, in a different way. Risk men who tell stories and expect you to carry the plot. Women who think vulnerability is their only leverage. The soothing lie that money erases problems rather than revealing them. Mitigations, audits, and receipts. No fast yes, faster no. Never rescuing anyone who won't rescue themselves. Claire Bennett stopped being a consolation, a benefactor, an accessory to narratives that made other people feel brave. She became the quietest thing she had ever wanted to be, the person in the room who knows where the money is and what it will cost if you lie about it. On Maple Lane, a flower opened like numbers coming clean. In a scuffed office, a team built and got paid. In a kitchen with Southlight, basil became pesto shared with people who had earned their seats. In a courthouse file, a closed case gathered dust. And in her ledger, the columns balanced not because life is fair, but because she did the math and then did it again, and this time, she refused to round. The end.